The coffee hit him like a declaration of war. Ethan Cross felt the scalding liquid seep through $3,000 worth of Italian wool, through his custom-fitted shirt, straight onto skin that hadn't been surprised by anything in at least 5 years. He stood frozen in the elevator, watching brown liquid drip onto marble floors, while his brain, trained to process complex algorithms in milliseconds, simply stopped working. The woman holding the empty cup didn't apologize. She didn't gasp. She didn't do any of the things people usually did when they realized they just assaulted a man whose net worth could buy their entire apartment building. She smiled. Not a polite smile. Not an embarrassed smile. A smile that suggested she found the whole situation deeply, personally amusing. "If it makes you feel any better," she said, her voice carrying the kind of warmth that expensive coffee should have but never did, "you look a little more human now." Ethan blinked. His productivity app was sending him notifications. Meeting in 7 minutes. Investor call in 12. Lunch scheduled for exactly 32 minutes of networking. But for the first time since he downloaded the thing, he ignored every single alert. "Do you have any idea how much this suit costs?" The words came out colder than he intended, but that was fine. Cold was his default setting. She tilted her head, pretending to consider the question with exaggerated seriousness. Her hair was dark and wavy, pulled into a messy bun that looked intentional in that way expensive stylists charged hundreds to achieve, except hers was probably accidental. She wore vintage jeans, a faded band t-shirt, and the kind of confidence that came from genuinely not caring what anyone thought. "I don't know," she said finally, "but I bet it has more personality now than it did 5 minutes ago." Ethan felt something crack in his chest, not his ribs, something deeper. Something that had been holding very still for a very long time. "I have a meeting in exactly," he glanced at his watch, 6 minutes and 43 seconds, a meeting that will determine the future of 300 employees. And now I'm going to walk in looking like I lost a fight with a vending machine. How dramatic. She rolled her eyes in a way that suggested she'd heard this kind of self-importance before and found it boring. "You could just take off the jacket. Take off the jacket." Ethan repeated the words like she'd suggested he walk into the boardroom in his underwear. "Yeah, you know, that thing covering your arms. Remove it. Revolutionary concept. I don't take off the jacket, ever." She crossed her arms, clearly enjoying herself now. "Even if it's on fire, I'd put out the fire with the jacket still on." "With the jacket still on," she repeated slowly, like she was documenting this for future anthropological study. "You know what? I believe you. You have that whole I iron my underwear energy." The elevator passed the 25th floor. Ethan tried to wipe the stain with his hand, which only spread it further across the fabric. Now it looked less like an accident and more like abstract art titled Corporate Breakdown in brown. "You're making it worse," she pointed out helpfully. "I know what I'm doing." "You clearly don't." Ethan stopped rubbing and stared at her, really looked at her for the first time. She had the kind of face that seemed to be holding back laughter even in neutral moments. Dark eyes that caught light like they were storing it for later. A small scar above her left eyebrow that suggested a story he suddenly, inexplicably wanted to know. She was the exact opposite of everything in his carefully curated life. "You're not going to apologize," he said. "Not a question, a statement of fact." "For what?" "For the coffee on my suit that you spilled." She seemed to consider this with the same exaggerated thoughtfulness as before. "Technically, you bumped into me when you walked into this elevator like you owned it," which, she glanced around the sleek interior with its polished steel and ambient lighting. "Now that I think about it, maybe you do, but still, you caused the initial collision. I bumped into you. Yes, you did. I stepped into an elevator. Like a Tesla on autopilot. Expensive, fast, and completely unaware of actual humans in your path." Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but realized he had no argument. He had walked in while staring at his phone, answering emails, mentally preparing for the meeting, calculating profit margins in his head. It was possible, just barely possible, that he hadn't paid attention to who was standing in front of him, but admitting that was absolutely out of the question. "Even so," he said, deploying his boardroom voice, "a polite person would apologize. A polite person doesn't enter elevators like a battering ram in Armani." The elevator reached the 30th floor. The doors slid open with a soft chime that sounded almost apologetic for interrupting them. Neither of them moved. "Isn't this your floor?" she asked. "It is." "Then why aren't you getting out?" "I'm waiting." "For what?" "A formal apology written in calligraphy. For a minimum level of civility." She stepped forward, directly into his personal space in a way that made Ethan instinctively lean back against the elevator wall. She was shorter than him by at least 6 inches, but somehow in that moment, she seemed to fill the entire small space with her presence. "Listen, you pressed and polished robot," she said, and that smile was back, half amusement and half challenge. "I'm not apologizing for an accident that you caused, and you know why. Enlighten me." "Because you need to learn that not everything in the world works exactly the way you want it to. Sometimes coffee spills. Sometimes meetings start late. Sometimes life just happens and all you can do is change your shirt and keep going." She patted his shoulder, right on top of the coffee stain, and walked out of the elevator. "Have a great meeting, Tesla," she called without looking back. The doors closed before Ethan could respond. He stood there alone, surrounded by his reflection in polished steel walls, with a ruined suit and something very strange happening in his chest. It wasn't anger, though it should have been. It wasn't humiliation, though that would have made sense. It was something he couldn't identify, something that felt like a puzzle piece that didn't fit anywhere in his carefully organized life. His phone vibrated. "Meeting in 2 minutes." Ethan looked down at the stain, then at the closed elevator doors, then at his reflection one more time. Who was that? He asked his own image. His reflection, predictably, didn't answer. Ethan's penthouse occupied the top floor of the Frost Bank Tower, with floor-to-ceiling windows that turned downtown Austin into a living screensaver. Everything in the apartment was smart. Lights that adjusted to circadian rhythms, temperature controlled to within 0.5 degrees, even the coffee maker that started brewing exactly 7 minutes before his alarm went off. It was 11:47 p.m. Ethan had been home for exactly 12 minutes. He stood in his kitchen, measuring out precisely 150 grams of chicken breast, 75 grams of brown rice, and 80 grams of steamed broccoli. His nutrition app had calculated his macros down to the gram. His fitness tracker had logged every step he'd taken that day. His calendar had already scheduled tomorrow down to 5-minute increments. Everything was under control. Everything was exactly as it should be. So why did he keep thinking about her? The woman from the elevator. The one who'd called him a Tesla on autopilot. The one who'd smiled like she knew something about him that he didn't know about himself. Ethan ate his dinner standing at the kitchen counter, scrolling through emails on his tablet. 37 new messages since he'd left the office. He answered them methodically, efficiently, without wasting a single word. At midnight exactly, he set down the tablet and walked to his bedroom. The room was minimalist. A king-sized bed with white sheets. A single nightstand. A lamp. Nothing on the walls. Nothing that suggested a person actually lived here instead of just existing between scheduled activities. Ethan opened the nightstand drawer. Inside was a pair of wireless earbuds in a case labeled personal in his own handwriting. Not his regular earbuds. Not the ones he wore to the gym or during conference calls. These were different. He picked them up, hesitated for just a moment, then put them in his ears. His phone was already in his hand. He opened an app that wasn't on his home screen, buried 3 folders deep where no one would accidentally find it. The app was simple, clean interface, no social features, just a library of 547 episodes. The show was called Hearts Unscripted, a romance podcast. Stories about people falling in love in messy, complicated, beautiful ways. stories about feelings that couldn't be calculated or controlled. Ethan had discovered it 3 years ago during a bout of insomnia. He'd been scrolling through podcast recommendations, looking for something about productivity or business strategy, when the algorithm had glitched and suggested this instead. He'd clicked it by accident. He'd listened to the entire first episode by choice. Now, 547 episodes later, it was the only thing that made him feel anything at all. The creator's voice was warm and alive in a way that made his sterile apartment feel less empty. She went by M. Santos. No photo, no social media presence, just that voice telling stories about people who were brave enough to feel things. Ethan pressed play on the latest episode. "Welcome back to Hearts Unscripted." Her voice filled his ears and something in his chest loosened. Tonight's story is about a man who built walls so high he forgot what he was protecting himself from. And about the woman who didn't try to climb them. She just waited on the other side until he was ready to open the door. Ethan closed his eyes and listened. The story was about a workaholic architect who fell in love with a street artist who painted murals on the buildings he designed. They were opposites. They drove each other crazy. They couldn't stay away from each other. It was fiction. It was fantasy. It was everything his real life wasn't. And for 37 minutes, Ethan let himself believe in it. When the episode ended, he opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling. His smart home system had dimmed the lights to optimal sleeping levels. His sleep tracker was waiting to log his rest patterns. His alarm was set for 5:58 a.m. Everything was under control. Except his phone was still in his hand, and he was scrolling to the next episode, and he knew he wasn't going to sleep for at least another hour because he needed to know what happened next in a story about people who didn't exist. His phone buzzed with a text. Derek, his assistant and the closest thing he had to a friend. "Dude, you ghosted the networking event again. Investors asking if you're okay." Ethan stared at the message. He'd forgotten about the event entirely. He'd been too busy thinking about coffee stains and dark eyes and a voice that told him stories in the dark. He typed back, "I'm fine, just busy." Derek's response came immediately. "You're always busy, that's not the same as fine." Ethan didn't reply. Instead, he opened the podcast app again and scrolled through his library. 547 episodes. Hundreds of hours of stories about people who felt things deeply, loved recklessly, lived messily. He'd listened to every single one. Some of them multiple times. And he'd never told anyone, not Derek, not his board members, not the therapist he'd seen twice before deciding that talking about feelings was inefficient. This was his secret, his one thing that existed outside the algorithm of his perfectly optimized life. He was about to start another episode when a notification popped up at the top of his screen. Hearts Unscripted Update. Important announcement. Ethan's finger hovered over the notification. Something cold settled in his stomach. He clicked it. The message was short, professional, devastating. After 4 incredible years, Hearts Unscripted will be ending with our final season. Due to funding challenges, Sunset Media Group can no longer support production. Our last episode will air in 3 months. Thank you for listening, for feeling, for being part of our story. M. Santos. Ethan read it 3 times. Then he sat up in bed, his heart doing something it rarely did, racing without any physical cause. The show was ending. His show was ending. The one thing in his life that made him feel like maybe, possibly, he was still capable of being human was disappearing in 3 months. He opened his laptop, typed Sunset Media Group into the search bar. The results were not encouraging. A small podcast production company based in Austin, founded 5 years ago, struggling financially. Their only successful property was Hearts Unscripted, and apparently even that wasn't enough to keep them afloat. Ethan stared at the screen for a long time. His productivity app sent him a notification. Sleep schedule disrupted. Recommend returning to optimal rest pattern. He ignored it. Instead, He opened his email and typed a message to his CFO. Jennifer need full financial analysis of Sunset Media Group by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Potential acquisition target. Don't ask questions yet. Ethan, he hit send before he could second guess himself. Then he lay back down, earbuds still in, and pressed play on another episode. The voice filled his ears again. Warm, alive, real. Tonight's story is about second chances, M. Santos said. About the courage it takes to reach for something you want, even when you're terrified of what it might cost you. Ethan listened until he finally fell asleep at 2:37 a.m., his sleep tracker logging the worst rest pattern he'd had in months. But for once, he didn't care about the data. He cared about something else entirely. The conference room on the 42nd floor of Cross Technologies had been designed by an architect who believed that intimidation was an aesthetic choice. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Austin. A table made from a single piece of reclaimed wood stretched 20 feet. Chairs that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Ethan sat at the head of the table at exactly 8:59 a.m., watching his board members file in with their tablets and their carefully neutral expressions. Jennifer Park, his CFO, was first. 46 years old, Harvard MBA, the only person in the company who wasn't afraid to tell him when he was being an idiot. She set a folder in front of him without a word. Marcus Webb, Chief Technology Officer. 38, Stanford dropout, could code in his sleep and frequently did. Patricia Rodriguez, Head of Operations. 52, former military, ran the company like a well-oiled machine. And Derek Chen, his executive assistant, who technically didn't need to be at board meetings, but Ethan had insisted on it 3 years ago because Derek was the only person who could translate his thoughts into language normal humans understood. Good morning, Ethan said as the clock hit 9 a.m. exactly. Thank you for making time. You called an emergency meeting, Jennifer said, opening the folder. We made time. I'm proposing an acquisition. The room went very quiet. An acquisition, Marcus repeated slowly. Of what? Ethan opened his own tablet and projected the information onto the screen behind him. Sunset Media Group, a podcast production company based here in Austin. The silence that followed was the kind that comes right before explosions. A podcast company, Patricia said, her voice carefully controlled. We make productivity software. I'm aware of what we make. Then help me understand, Jennifer leaned forward, why we're looking at a failing media company whose only asset is, she glanced at her notes, a romance podcast. Audio content is the next frontier, Ethan said, deploying the explanation he prepared at 4 a.m. Podcast advertising revenue is projected to reach $2 billion by next year. We're missing an opportunity. We're a B2B company, Marcus pointed out. We sell enterprise solutions to corporations. What do we know about consumer audio content? We learn. By buying a company that's actively losing money, Jennifer pulled up a spreadsheet. They're hemorrhaging cash. Their burn rate is unsustainable. Their only profitable property is this Heart's unscripted show, and even that isn't enough to keep them afloat. Ethan had expected this, had prepared for it. Which is exactly why the acquisition cost will be minimal. They're desperate. We can get it for a fraction of what it would cost to build our own audio division from scratch. Or, Patricia suggested, we could not enter the audio market at all and focus on what we're actually good at. Diversification reduces risk. Diversification into a market we don't understand increases risk, Jennifer countered. She was looking at him with that expression she got when she knew something was wrong but couldn't quite figure out what. Ethan, what's really going on here? I just explained what's going on. You explained a strategy. I'm asking about the motivation. Ethan met her eyes. Jennifer had been with him since the beginning. She'd helped him build Cross Technologies from a startup in his apartment to a company worth $800 million. She knew him better than almost anyone. Which meant she knew when he was lying. The motivation is growth, he said. Expansion, future-proofing our portfolio. Future-proofing, Jennifer repeated, with romance podcasts, with audio content that has a demonstrated audience. Derek, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat. Can I ask a question? That's why you're here. Have you listened to this podcast, Hearts Unscripted? The room went very still. Ethan felt something cold slide down his spine. I've reviewed the metrics. The download numbers are impressive. That's not what I asked. The content is irrelevant. The audience data is what matters. So you haven't listened to it, Derek said, but there was something in his voice that suggested he didn't believe that at all. I've done my research. Research, Jennifer said slowly. Ethan, you're asking us to approve a 7-figure acquisition of a company whose only valuable asset is a show you haven't even listened to. I've reviewed the analytics. Analytics don't tell you if the content is actually good. The audience numbers tell me it's good. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying Ethan with the kind of focus he usually reserved for debugging code. You know what's weird? I looked up this show last night after you sent the briefing. It's been running for 4 years, 500+ episodes, and it has almost no social media presence. The creator is completely anonymous, just goes by M. Santos. So it's strange that a show this successful would have a creator who's that private, unless they have a reason to stay hidden. Maybe they value their privacy. Or maybe, Marcus continued, there's someone who would be embarrassed if people knew they created romance content. Ethan felt his jaw tight. That's speculation. It's observation. Can we return to the actual business discussion? Jennifer closed her folder. Fine. Business discussion. You want to spend $7.2 million on a failing company. You want to enter a market we have zero experience in. And you want to do it based on analytics for a show you claim you've never listened to. She paused. Does that about sum it up? Yes. Then my answer is no. Mine too, Patricia added. Marcus nodded. Same. Ethan looked at each of them. I'm not asking for permission. I'm asking for input. Then here's my input, Jennifer said. This is a bad idea. Really bad idea. And I think you know that, which means there's something else going on that you're not telling us. There's nothing else going on. Ethan, the acquisition moves forward, he said, his voice going cold in the way that ended discussions. I'll handle the negotiations personally. Jennifer, I need you to structure the deal. Marcus, start thinking about how we integrate their systems. Patricia, prepare the team for the transition. No one moved. That's all, Ethan said. Thank you for your time. They filed out slowly, exchanging looks that clearly said our boss has lost his mind. Derek was the last to leave. He paused at the door. You know they're going to figure it out eventually, he said quietly. Figure out what? Whatever you're not telling them. There's nothing to figure out. Derek smiled sadly. Dude, I've worked for you for 5 years. I know when you're lying, you're really bad at it. Derek, it's okay. I don't need to know. But maybe you should ask yourself why you're so determined to keep it a secret. He left before Ethan could respond. Ethan sat alone in the conference room, surrounded by windows that showed him the entire city but somehow made him feel more isolated than ever. His phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. I'll structure the deal, but we're going to talk about this later. Really talk. He didn't reply. Instead, he opened his podcast app and scrolled to the latest episode of Hearts Unscripted. His finger hovered over the play button. Then he closed the app and put his phone away. He had work to do. He had an acquisition to finalize. He had a show to save. And if his board thought he was crazy, if his CFO thought he was hiding something, if his assistant thought he was lying, well, they were probably right. But some secrets were worth keeping, even if they cost $7.2 million. Sunset Media Group occupied a converted warehouse in East Austin, the kind of neighborhood where food trucks parked permanently and murals covered every available wall. The building itself was painted turquoise, with Create Loudly spray painted across the front in letters 3 feet tall. Ethan's driver pulled up to the curb at exactly 2 p.m. Sir, the driver said, glancing at the building with obvious doubt, are you sure this is the right address? I'm sure. It looks like. I know what it looks like. Ethan stepped out of the car into afternoon heat that hit him like a wall. His suit was already too warm. The neighborhood smelled like tacos and spray paint, and something else he couldn't identify, possibility maybe, or chaos. He hated it immediately. The front door was propped open with a vintage typewriter. Inside, the space was exactly as chaotic as he'd feared. Exposed brick walls covered with Polaroids and sticky notes. Mismatched furniture that looked like it had been rescued from various garage sales. String lights hanging from exposed ceiling beams. A couch that might have been red once but was now more of a faded coral. And everywhere were books. Stacked on shelves, piled on tables, used as coasters and doorstops and apparently decorative elements. A young woman sat at the front desk, wearing headphones and nodding along to something only she could hear. She had purple hair and at least 7 visible piercings. Ethan cleared his throat. She didn't look up. He cleared his throat again, louder, still nothing. He reached out and tapped the desk. She jumped, pulled off her headphones, and stared at him. "Holy, you scared me. I have a 2 p.m. meeting with, oh my God, you're the suit guy." Ethan blinked. "Excuse me, the suit guy, from the elevator. Maya told us about you." She was grinning now, looking him up and down like he was an exotic animal that had wandered into the wrong habitat. "She said you looked like a Tesla on autopilot." She was right. "I'm here for a business meeting." Right, the hostile takeover. It's not a hostile takeover, it's an acquisition. That's what people say when they're doing a hostile takeover. She stood up, revealing platform boots that added at least 4 inches to her height. "I'm Riley. Intern / receptionist / whatever needs doing. Maya's in the studio. Follow me." She led him deeper into the warehouse, past a kitchen area where someone had left a pizza box open on the counter, past a wall covered entirely in what appeared to be listener fan art, past a room full of recording equipment that looked both expensive and haphazardly arranged. "Fair warning," Riley said over her shoulder. "Maya's in a mood today. The cancellation announcement didn't go over well with the team. I'm here to discuss that." "Yeah, we heard. Rich guy swoops in to save the day." "Very romantic. Maya hates it." "Why would she hate it?" Riley stopped and turned to face him. "Because she spent 4 years building this from nothing. Because she poured everything she had into this show. And now some stranger is buying it out from under her like it's just another line item on a spreadsheet." She paused. "No offense." "None taken." "Liar." She pushed open a door at the end of the hall. "Maya, your 2 p.m. is here." The studio was smaller than Ethan expected. Soundproofing panels on the walls, a desk with 2 microphones, a computer setup that looked professional despite the stickers covering every surface, and sitting at the desk, wearing headphones and staring at a screen, the woman from the elevator. She turned around slowly, and Ethan watched recognition hit her face like a physical blow. "You," she said. "You," he replied, because apparently his vocabulary had abandoned him entirely. Riley looked between them. "Wait, you two know each other." "We've met," Maya said, pulling off her headphones and standing up. She was wearing jeans and an oversized sweater that said "Plot Twist" in faded letters. Her hair was down today, falling past her shoulders in waves that caught the light from the window. She looked exactly like she had in the elevator. She looked nothing like he'd imagined M. Santos would look. "You're the Tesla guy," she said. "You're M. Santos. Guilty. You're the creator of Hearts Unscripted." "I am." She crossed her arms. "And you're the billionaire who just bought my company without asking." "I didn't buy it yet. The deal isn't finalized. But it will be, because you have money and we don't, and that's how the world works." The silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither of them was saying. Riley cleared her throat. "Should I leave?" "Yes," Maya said. "No," Ethan said at the same time. Riley looked between them again, then back toward the door. "I'm gonna leave. But I'm telling Jade and Marcus about this because it's too good not to share." She disappeared, closing the door behind her. Maya and Ethan stared at each other. "So," Maya said finally, "you're here to save my show." "I'm here to discuss a business arrangement." "Right, business." She walked to the window, looking out at the street below. "Let me guess, you saw we were struggling, saw an opportunity, decided to swoop in and add us to your portfolio." That's not, or wait. She turned back to face him. You're a fan, that's what Riley said. You listened to the show. Ethan felt his throat go dry. I've reviewed the metrics. The metrics. The download numbers are impressive. You said that already in the elevator when you were covered in my coffee. She tilted her head, studying him. You're lying. I'm not. You are. You have this thing you do with your jaw when you lie. It gets really tight, like you're physically holding the truth inside. I don't have a thing. You're doing it right now. Ethan forced himself to relax his jaw. Miss Santos, Maya, I'm here because I believe your show has value. I'm here because I want to help. Help, she laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to help? Let me tell you what help looks like from where I'm standing. Help looks like a stranger buying my company. Help looks like losing control of the thing I built. Help looks like becoming an employee of someone who probably thinks romance is a waste of time. I don't think that, really, because I looked you up, found an interview from last year where you said, and I quote, "Fiction is entertainment for people who have nothing better to do. I prefer content that adds measurable value." Ethan remembered that interview, remembered saying those exact words, remembered meaning them at the time. That was taken out of context, he said. Was it? I was talking about business strategy, not personal preferences. So you do read fiction. Trap closed around him. He could lie. He could deflect. He could walk out and let the acquisition fall through and never have to admit that he'd spent 3 years listening to her voice in the dark, feeling things he didn't know how to feel in daylight. I listened to your show, he said quietly. Maya went very still. What? I listened to Hearts Unscripted. I've listened to every episode, some of them multiple times. The words were coming out now and he couldn't stop them. I discovered it 3 years ago. I was having insomnia scrolling through podcasts and the algorithm suggested it. I clicked by accident. I stayed by choice. She was staring at him like he'd just told her he was secretly an alien. You listened to my show, she repeated. Yes. My romance podcast. Yes. You, Mr. Fiction, is a waste of time. I lied in that interview. I lie about it all the time. Because if anyone knew, if my board, my investors, anyone in my professional life knew that I spend my nights listening to stories about people falling in love. He stopped, took a breath. It would destroy everything I've built. Maya walked closer to him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something that reminded him of bookstores and coffee shops and all the places he never let himself spend time. So you bought my company, she said slowly, to save a show you're embarrassed to admit you love. I'm not embarrassed. You just said you lie about it constantly. That's different. How? Ethan didn't have an answer for that. Maya laughed again, and this time there was something almost sad in it. This is insane. This whole thing is insane. I know. You spent $7 million on a secret. 7.2 million. Oh well, that makes it totally reasonable. They stood there in the small studio, surrounded by soundproofing and microphones and the evidence of 4 years of work that was about to become his. I don't want to take this from you, Ethan said. I want to save it, by owning it, by keeping it alive. And what do you want in return? The question hung in the air between them. Ethan thought about the final season, about the ending that hadn't been written yet. About Daniel and Alina and whether they would get their happy ending or if M. Santos would break his heart the way real life always did. Creative consultation, he said. The contract includes a clause that allows me to provide input on content direction. Maya's expression went cold. You want to control my stories. I want to have a conversation about them. No. Maya, no, absolutely not. You can buy the company. You can own the equipment and the studio and the distribution rights. But the stories are mine, they've always been mine, and they're not for sale. I'm not trying to buy them, I'm trying to protect them. From what? From ending badly. The words came out before he could stop them. Maya stared at him. You want a happy ending. I want, he stopped, started again. Your stories matter to people, they matter to me. And if this is the final season, if this is really the end, then yes. I want it to be an ending that feels true. True, Maya repeated. Or happy. Can it be both? Not always. Why not? She walked back to her desk, picked up her headphones, set them down again. Because sometimes the truest thing is that people don't end up together. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes the story has to end with loss because that's what's real. But it doesn't have to. No, she agreed, but it might need to. They looked at each other across the small room. I have a counter offer, Maya said finally. I'm listening. You want creative input, fine. But first you have to prove you understand what you're asking for. How? She smiled, and it was the same smile from the elevator, half amusement, half challenge. 1 week, 7 days, you live by my rules. What rules? No phone, no schedule, no control. Every day I give you an assignment, something that requires you to actually feel something instead of just calculating it. You complete all 7 assignments and then we'll talk about the ending. Ethan felt his heart start to race. That's impossible. I have a company to run. You have people to run your company, delegate. I have meetings, calls, obligations. You have a choice. She walked to the door, opened it. Take the week and prove you understand what stories are actually about, or walk away and let the show die. Your call, Tesla. Ethan looked at her. At the studio. At the evidence of everything she'd built. He thought about his calendar, packed with meetings scheduled down to 5-minute increments. He thought about his board, his investors, his carefully constructed life. He thought about Daniel and Alina and the ending he might never get to hear. 1 week, he heard himself say, 1 week. And then you'll consider changing the ending. I'll consider having a conversation about it. That's not a guarantee. Guarantees don't exist in real life, only in your contracts. She held out her hand. Ethan looked at it for a long moment. Then he shook it. Her hand was warm. Calloused in a way that suggested she did more than just talk into microphones. Real. Deal, he said. Deal. She let go of his hand. Be here tomorrow at 8 a.m. And Ethan, yes, bring comfortable shoes. We're going to ruin a lot more than just your suit. She walked out, leaving him alone in the studio. Ethan stood there for a full minute, wondering what he just agreed to. Then he pulled out his phone and opened his calendar app. He had 63 scheduled events over the next 7 days. He deleted every single one. Ethan arrived at Maya's address at 7:56 a.m., which gave him exactly 4 minutes to prepare himself before the agreed-upon start time. He'd spent the previous evening researching optimal strategies for unstructured time. Yes, he was aware of the irony, and had developed a mental framework for approaching each day's assignment with maximum efficiency. The framework lasted approximately 30 seconds. Maya's house was a small bungalow in East Austin, painted a cheerful yellow that hurt his eyes in the morning sun. The front yard was less of a yard and more of a garden explosion. Wild flowers, herbs, vegetables, and plants he couldn't identify, all growing together in what appeared to be organized chaos. A wooden sign by the door said, "Come in, the door's open." Ethan checked his watch. 7:58 a.m. He knocked anyway. No answer. He knocked again, still nothing. At exactly 8 a.m. he tried the doorknob. It turned. He pushed the door open slowly. Hello. The inside of the house matched the outside, colorful, cluttered, and somehow cozy despite the chaos. Books everywhere, plants on every surface, art on the walls that looked like it had been made by friends, not purchased from galleries. A couch covered in blankets and pillows that suggested people actually sat on it instead of just looking at it. Maya. A sound came from deeper in the house. Not quite a groan, not quite a word. Ethan followed it to what appeared to be the bedroom. The door was half open. Maya, it's 8 a.m. You said to be here at 8. Did I? Her voice was muffled. That was optimistic of past me. Are you still in bed? Define still. Ethan stood in the hallway, uncertain. His productivity app would have told him exactly what to do in this situation, but he'd left his phone in the car as instructed. Should I? Come back later. No, I'm getting up. Probably, maybe. A pause. What time is it? 8:02. In the morning? Yes. More sounds, movement, something falling, a curse in Spanish. 5 minutes later, Maya emerged wearing pajama pants covered in tiny books and a t-shirt that said, "I like big BOOKS and I cannot lie." Her hair was in a messy bun that was actually messy, not the intentional kind. She had pillow creases on her face. She looked at him and yawned. "You're very punctual," she said. "You told me 8 a.m. I did, didn't I? Note to self, don't make plans with morning people." She shuffled past him toward the kitchen. "Coffee. I don't drink coffee." She stopped and turned around slowly. "What? I don't drink coffee. The caffeine disrupts my sleep patterns." Maya stared at him like he just admitted to a serious crime. "You don't drink coffee?" "No, but you drink what? Tea, water, sometimes green juice." "Green juice," she repeated. "Of course you do." She continued to the kitchen. "Well, I drink coffee, lots of it, so you're going to have to wait while I become human." The kitchen was small and bright with windows that looked out onto the garden. Maya moved around it with the ease of someone who knew where everything was even half asleep. She filled a kettle, set it on the stove, pulled out a French press that looked older than Ethan. "So," she said, leaning against the counter, "ready for your first assignment?" "I am." "You seem tense." "I'm not tense." "Your shoulders are up by your ears." Ethan consciously lowered his shoulders. "I'm ready." "Okay," Maya smiled. "Today's assignment is simple." "Good. Do nothing." Ethan waited for her to continue. She didn't. "That's it," he asked. "That's it. Do nothing." "Yep. For how long?" 2 hours. 2 hours of nothing. "You're really struggling with this concept, aren't you?" The kettle started to whistle. Maya poured water over coffee grounds, pressed the plunger down slowly, and poured herself a mug that said "Plot happens." "Define nothing," Ethan said. "See, this is your problem. You want to define it, categorize it, turn it into a task you can complete." She took a sip of coffee and sighed happily. "Nothing means nothing. No phone, no reading, no planning, no thinking about work, just existing." "That's not possible." "It's extremely possible. People do it all the time." "What people?" "Happy people." She led him through the house to the back porch. It was small, just big enough for a wooden swing and a few plants. The yard beyond was as wild as the front, more flowers, a vegetable garden, a small shed painted turquoise. "Sit," Maya said, pointing to the swing. Ethan sat. "Now stay there for 2 hours." "And do what?" "Nothing. That's literally the assignment." "But no buts, no questions, no strategies." She settled into a chair nearby with her coffee and a book. "I'll be right here if you need anything, but you won't need anything, that's the point." Ethan sat on the swing. It creaked slightly under his weight. He looked at the yard, at the flowers, at the sky. He lasted approximately 47 seconds. "Has it been 2 hours yet?" he asked. Maya didn't look up from her book. "No." "How long has it been?" "Less than a minute." "That's impossible. Time moves slowly when you're not distracting yourself from it." Ethan tried again. He focused on the garden, counted the different types of flowers he could see, estimated the square footage of the yard, calculated the optimal layout for maximum growth. "You're thinking," Maya said. "I'm observing." "You're calculating. I can literally see your brain working from here." "How else am I supposed to spend 2 hours?" "By not spending them, by just being in them." A dog appeared from around the corner of the house. A mutt, part terrier, part something else, all personality. Scruffy brown fur, one ear that stood up and one that flopped down, eyes that looked simultaneously wise and chaotic. The dog walked directly to Ethan, sat at his feet, and stared up at him. "That's Bowie," Maya said. "He's my roommate." "You live with a dog." "He lives with me. There's a difference." Bowie continued staring. Ethan stared back. "What does he want?" Ethan asked. "He's deciding if he likes you." "How long does that take?" "Depends on the person." "He figured out my ex was terrible in about 30 seconds. Took him 3 weeks to warm up to my best friend Jade." Bowie tilted his head, considering. Then he jumped up onto the swing next to Ethan and settled in like he'd been there all along. "Huh," Maya said. "That's new." "What?" "He usually hates uptight people." "I'm not uptight." "You're wearing a button-down shirt and slacks to sit on a porch swing." "I don't own casual clothes." Maya looked at him over her book. "You don't own casual clothes." "I have gym clothes." "That doesn't count." "Why not?" "Because gym clothes are for exercising, which is just another form of optimization." She went back to her book. "We're going to have to fix that." Ethan sat with the dog pressed against his side, warm and solid and somehow calming. He tried to relax, tried to just exist. He lasted another 3 minutes. "This is impossible," he said. "It's only impossible because you're fighting it." "I'm not fighting anything." "You're fighting everything. You're fighting the stillness. You're fighting the silence. You're fighting the fact that nothing is happening and that's okay. Nothing happening is not okay. Nothing happening is wasted time." Maya closed her book. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you're terrified of what might happen if you actually stop moving long enough to feel something." The words hit harder than they should have. "That's not," Ethan started. "It's okay," Maya interrupted. "You don't have to admit it, not to me. But maybe you should admit it to yourself." She went back to her book, leaving Ethan alone with his thoughts and a dog who had apparently decided they were friends now. The morning stretched on. Birds sang. Breezes moved through the garden. The sun climbed higher. And slowly, so slowly Ethan almost didn't notice, something in his chest began to unclench. He stopped counting minutes, stopped calculating optimal positions, stopped thinking about what he should be doing and just sat with what he was doing. Which was nothing, and it was terrifying, and it was peaceful, and he didn't know how to feel about that. Bowie shifted against him, sighing contentedly. Ethan found his hand moving to scratch behind the dog's ears without consciously deciding to do it. "You're doing better," Maya said quietly. "How can you tell?" "Your jaw isn't tight anymore." Ethan touched his jaw. She was right. They sat in silence for a while longer, not uncomfortable silence, just silence. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said eventually, "Sure." "Why did you start the podcast?" Maya was quiet for a moment. "My mom died when I was 23, breast cancer, very fast, very brutal." She kept her eyes on her book, but Ethan could tell she wasn't really reading. "After she died, I couldn't feel anything. Like someone had turned off all my emotions and I was just going through the motions of being alive." "I'm sorry." "Thanks." She took a breath. "One day, about 6 months after, I was cleaning out her things and I found these romance novels she'd hidden in her closet, dozens of them. My mom was this serious, practical woman, a nurse, very no-nonsense, but she had this whole secret collection of love stories." "Like me?" Ethan said before he could stop himself. Maya smiled. "Yeah, like you." She finally looked up. "I started reading them, and slowly I started feeling again. The books reminded me that even when life is terrible, people still fall in love, still choose each other, still find joy in the mess. So you started telling those stories." "I started telling my own versions, stories about people who were broken and messy and real, stories that reminded me and hopefully other people that we're all just trying to figure it out." Ethan understood that more than he wanted to admit. "The show is ending," he said, "but it doesn't have to end sadly." "Maybe not," Maya agreed. "Has to end honestly." "What if honestly can be happy? Then I'll write it that way." They looked at each other across the porch. 2 hours, Maya said, checking her phone. "You made it." Ethan blinked. Had it really been 2 hours, it had felt like both forever and no time at all. "How do you feel?" Maya asked. He thought about it, really thought about it. "Uncomfortable," he admitted, "but also lighter. That's the nothing working. I don't understand how doing nothing can feel like something." "That's because you're used to filling every moment with noise so you don't have to hear what's underneath." Ethan stood up. Bowie jumped down and trotted off into the garden. "Same time tomorrow?" Maya asked. "What's tomorrow's assignment?" "You'll find out tomorrow. I prefer to prepare." "I know, that's why I'm not telling you." She walked him to the front door. On the porch, she stopped. "Ethan." "Yes." "You did good today. I know it doesn't feel like you did anything, but that's kind of the point." He wanted to argue, wanted to explain that he'd spent 2 hours achieving nothing, which went against every principle he'd built his life on. But he also felt different somehow, quieter inside. "Thank you," he said instead. Maya smiled. "See you tomorrow, Tesla." Ethan walked to his car, got in, and sat there for a moment before starting the engine. His phone was in the cup holder where he'd left it. 63 notifications. He looked at it, looked back at Maya's yellow house. Then he put the phone in the glove compartment without checking a single message. He had 6 more days, 6 more assignments, 6 more chances to figure out what he was really doing here. and for the first time in years, he wasn't entirely sure he wanted to know the answer. Ethan showed up on day 3 wearing jeans. They were new jeans, still had the store creases, tags carefully removed, but they were jeans nonetheless. He paired them with a plain white t-shirt that probably cost more than most people's entire outfits, but Maya decided to count it as progress. "Look at you," she said when she opened the door at 9:30 a.m., almost like a real person. "I bought them yesterday. I can tell you look like you're wearing a costume. These cost $200. That doesn't make them less of a costume." She grabbed her bag. "Come on, we're going somewhere." "Where?" "You'll see." They took her car, a beat-up Honda Civic with a bumper sticker that said, "My other car is also a metaphor." The interior smelled like coffee and old books and something floral he couldn't identify. "Your car is very," Ethan searched for a diplomatic word, "lived in." "I was going to say personalized." "You were going to say messy." Maya pulled into traffic with the confidence of someone who'd learned to drive in a city where lanes were suggestions. "It's okay. I know what I am." They drove through downtown Austin, past the Capitol building and the university, into a neighborhood Ethan had never been to despite living in the city for 8 years. Small houses with big porches, community gardens, a mural of Willie Nelson that took up an entire wall. Maya parked in front of a building with a hand-painted sign, "Creative SOULS Studio Art for Everyone." "We're painting," she announced. "Painting what?" "Whatever you want. That's the assignment. Create something messy." The studio was exactly what Ethan expected, chaotic, colorful, full of people who looked like they'd never worried about quarterly earnings in their lives. Canvas everywhere, paint in every color, the smell of turpentine and possibility. A woman with silver hair and paint-stained overalls greeted them at the door. "Maya, me Amber, it's been too long." "Hi, Rosa." Maya hugged her. "This is Ethan. He needs to learn how to make a mess." Rosa looked Ethan up and down with the assessing gaze of someone who'd seen every type of person walk through her doors. "Ah, one of those." "One of what?" Ethan asked. "One of the ones who thinks art has rules." She patted his cheek. "Don't worry, we'll fix that." She set them up at a table in the corner with 2 blank canvases, more paint than seemed necessary, and brushes in every size. "The only rule," Rosa said, "is that there are no rules. Paint what you feel, not what you think you should feel." She left them alone. Ethan stared at the blank canvas. "I don't know what I feel." "That's the problem," Maya said, already squeezing paint onto her palette, blues and purples and a yellow so bright it hurt to look at. "You spent so long not feeling that you've forgotten how." "That's not true. Really. When's the last time you cried?" Ethan thought about it. "I don't remember." "When's the last time you laughed, really laughed, not that polite thing you do in meetings?" He couldn't remember that either. "When's the last time you were angry or scared or excited about something that wasn't related to profit margins?" "I feel things," Ethan said, but the words sounded hollow even to him. "Okay." Maya dipped her brush in blue paint. "Then show me." Ethan picked up a brush, chose black paint because black was safe, neutral, professional. He painted a straight line across the canvas, then another line perpendicular to it, then 2 more lines, creating a perfect grid. Maya watched him work. "What is that?" "A structure. It's a cage. It's organized. It's sad." Ethan set down his brush. "I don't know how to do this." "That's because you're trying to do it right. There is no right, there's just honest." She reached over and dipped her fingers directly into red paint. Before Ethan could process what was happening, she'd smeared it across his perfect grid. "What are you doing?" "Helping." She grabbed yellow next, added it to the red. "See, now it's not perfect, now it's something. It's ruined. It's alive." Ethan stared at the canvas, at the chaos Maya had introduced to his careful lines. Something in his chest tightened, anger maybe, or fear, or something he didn't have a name for. He picked up his brush, dipped it in blue paint, and instead of trying to fix the mess, he added to it. He painted a curve that cut through the grid, then another. Then he abandoned the brush entirely and used his hands like Maya had, smearing colors together, not thinking about what it should look like, just feeling what it wanted to be. "There you go," Maya said softly. "Now you're painting." They worked in silence for a while. Maya's canvas was taking shape, something abstract and beautiful, all movement and emotion. Ethan's was chaos, but it was his chaos. At some point, Maya flicked paint at him. It hit his white t-shirt, blue paint, right over his heart. "Did you just," she grinned. "Oops. That was not an accident. Prove it." Ethan looked at his paint-covered hands, looked at Maya's smug expression, looked at the red paint on his palette. He flicked it at her. It hit her cheek. Her eyes went wide. "Oh, you did not. Prove it." What happened next could only be described as a paint war. Maya got him with yellow. Ethan retaliated with green. She hit his jeans with purple. He got her shirt with orange. They were laughing, actually laughing, the kind that came from the stomach and made everything else disappear. Rosa walked by, saw them covered in paint, and just shook her head with a smile. By the time they stopped, they were both disasters, paint in their hair, on their clothes, on their faces. The canvas was forgotten. The mess was everywhere, and Ethan couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this free. "You look ridiculous," Maya said, trying to catch her breath. "You look worse." "Impossible. I look amazing." She had purple paint in her hair and blue on her nose, and she was absolutely right. She looked amazing. They cleaned up as much as they could, which wasn't much. Rosa gave them both paint-stained aprons to wear over their ruined clothes. "Keep them," she said. "Consider it a souvenir of the day you learned to make a mess." On the way back to the car, Maya stopped at a taco truck. "We're getting food." "I don't eat tacos." She turned to stare at him. "You don't eat tacos. They're not part of my meal plan." "Your meal plan," she repeated slowly. "Ethan, we're in Austin. Not eating tacos is basically a crime. I have specific macros I need to hit. Forget your macros, live a little." She ordered for both of them al pastor tacos with all the toppings, chips with queso, and 2 Mexican Cokes in glass bottles. They sat at a picnic table under a tree, still covered in paint, eating food that definitely wasn't on any nutrition app. Ethan took a bite of his taco. Flavors exploded in his mouth, spicy, savory, bright with cilantro and lime. "Oh my God," he said. "Right. This is incredible. Welcome to actually living." Maya raised her Coke bottle. "To making messes." Ethan clinked his bottle against hers. "To making messes." They ate in comfortable silence, watching people walk by, existing in the moment without trying to optimize it. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said eventually. "Sure." "Why are you doing this, the whole week thing? You could have just taken my money and let me have input on the show. Why make me do these assignments?" Maya wiped salsa from her chin. "Because I don't want your money. I want you to understand what you're asking for when you say you want to change the ending." "I understand. You don't. You think you do, but you don't." She set down her taco. "Stories aren't just entertainment. They're not products to be optimized. They're mirrors. They show us who we are and who we could be. And when you ask me to change an ending, you're asking me to lie about what I see in that mirror. I'm not asking you to lie. I'm asking you to choose hope. Hope and honesty aren't always the same thing. They could be." Maya looked at him for a long moment. "You really believe that?" "I want to." "That's not the same as believing it." "Maybe not, but it's a start." They finished their food and drove back to Maya's house. Bowie greeted them at the door, took one look at their paint-covered state, and sneezed. "Even the dog thinks we're a mess," Ethan said. "The dog is right." Maya grabbed her phone. "But first we're documenting this." "No, too late." She pulled him close and took a selfie, both of them covered in paint, laughing, looking nothing like the people they'd been 3 days ago. She showed him the photo. "See, you look human." Ethan stared at the image, at his own face, relaxed and happy in a way he didn't recognize. At Maya beside him, paint in her hair, joy in her eyes. "Send that to me," he said. "Really?" "Yeah," she texted it to him. "What are you going to do with it?" "I don't know, keep it, I guess. As evidence that you're capable of fun, as evidence that I'm capable of something." Maya's expression softened. "You're capable of a lot more than you think, Ethan. I'm starting to figure that out." She walked him to the door. "Tomorrow's assignment is bigger." "How much bigger?" "We're taking a road trip." "To where?" "You'll find out tomorrow. Pack an overnight bag." "Overnight?" "Yeah. We're going to face something you've been running from for a long time." Ethan felt his stomach drop. "What? Your past?" She closed the door before he could argue. Ethan stood on her porch, covered in paint, holding a photo of himself looking happy and wondering what he'd gotten himself into. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He'd been checking it once a day just to make sure nothing was actively on fire. 67 new messages. He looked at them, looked back at Maya's door. Then he put the phone away without reading a single one. Whatever was waiting for him tomorrow, he needed to face it without the armor of his carefully controlled life, even if the thought terrified him. They left at 6 a.m., which Maya claimed was basically the middle of the night, but Ethan secretly appreciated because it meant he could stick to something resembling his normal schedule. The drive to Houston took 3 hours. Maya had made a playlist, a chaotic mix of indie rock, old country, and Spanish guitar that shouldn't have worked together but somehow did. She sang along to every song, off-key and enthusiastic. Ethan watched the landscape change outside the window. Austin's hills giving way to flat Texas plains. Small towns with names he'd never heard. The sky getting bigger the farther they drove. "You're quiet," Maya said somewhere around Bastrop. "I'm thinking. About whether this is a good idea." "It's not," she said cheerfully, "but we're doing it anyway." She'd made him tell her about his family the night before, about his parents' divorce when he was 16, about how his dad had thrown himself into work afterward, building a successful law practice while barely speaking to his son, about how his mom had remarried within a year, moved to Houston with her new husband, started a new life that didn't seem to have much room for Ethan in it. About how he decided that if love could disappear that easily, it was safer not to feel it at all. "When's the last time you saw them?" Maya had asked. "My mom, 2 years ago, Christmas, it was awkward. And your dad, 4 years, we email sometimes. Email. It's efficient. It's sad." Now they were pulling into a neighborhood in suburban Houston, nice houses, manicured lawns, the kind of place where people grilled on weekends and knew their neighbors' names. Maya parked in front of a 2-story house with blue shutters and a garden full of roses. "This is it?" Ethan asked. "This is it, your mom's place?" "She doesn't know we're coming." "I know." "Maya, Ethan, if I told you to call her, would you have done it?" He didn't answer. "Exactly. Sometimes you have to just show up." They walked to the front door. Ethan's heart was doing something complicated in his chest, racing and stopping at the same time. Maya rang the doorbell, footsteps inside. The door opened. Ethan's mother stood there in yoga pants and a t-shirt, her hair shorter than he remembered, reading glasses pushed up on her head. She looked at him, looked at Maya, looked back at him. "Ethan." "Hi, Mom." "What are you?" She stopped, started again. "Come in, please come in." The house smelled like coffee and something baking. It was warm and lived in and nothing like the sterile perfection of Ethan's penthouse. "I'm sorry for just showing up," Ethan said. "This was my idea," Maya finished. "I'm Maya." "I'm a friend of Ethan's." His mother shook Maya's hand, still looking slightly stunned. "I'm Caroline. It's nice to meet you. Any friend of Ethan's is, well, I didn't know Ethan had friends, so this is wonderful." "Mom, I'm kidding, mostly." She led them to the kitchen. "I was just making muffins. Are you hungry?" The kitchen was bright and cluttered in the best way. Cookbooks stacked on the counter, photos on the fridge. A calendar with actual handwriting on it instead of digital reminders. Caroline pulled muffins from the oven, blueberry from the smell of them. "So," she said, setting the pan on a cooling rack, "what brings you to Houston? Business?" "No," Ethan said. "I wanted to see you." His mother went very still. "You wanted to see me?" "Yes. After 2 years. I know it's been a long time, 2 years, Ethan. 2 years of emails and text messages and excuses about being busy." Her voice wasn't angry. It was worse than angry. It was hurt. "And now you just show up." "I'm sorry. Are you here because she made you come?" Caroline nodded at Maya. "I'm here because I need to be," Ethan said quietly. The silence stretched between them. Maya cleared her throat. "I'm going to look at your garden. It's beautiful." She slipped out the back door, leaving Ethan alone with his mother. Caroline poured 2 cups of coffee without asking if he wanted any, set one in front of him, sat down across the table. "Talk," she said. "I don't know where to start." Start with why you stopped coming home. Ethan wrapped his hands around the coffee mug. It was warm, solid, real, because it didn't feel like home anymore, he said. After you and Dad split up, after you remarried, it felt like you'd moved on to a new life and I was just leftover from the old one. Caroline's eyes filled with tears. Oh, Ethan. I'm not saying that to make you feel bad. That's how it felt, like I didn't fit anywhere anymore. So you built a life where you didn't need to fit, where you could control everything so nothing could hurt you. Something like that. His mother reached across the table and took his hand. I'm so sorry. I thought you were okay. You were always so independent, so focused on school and then your business. I thought you didn't need me anymore. I always needed you. I just didn't know how to say it. They sat there, holding hands across the kitchen table, years of silence finally breaking open. I have something to show you, Caroline said eventually. She left the room and came back with a cardboard box. I've been keeping these. Wasn't sure if you'd ever want them, but I couldn't throw them away. She set the box on the table. Inside were notebooks, dozens of them, filled with Ethan's teenage handwriting. My journals, Ethan said, surprised. Not journals, poems. Caroline pulled one out and opened it. You used to write poetry. Did you remember that? Ethan took the notebook. Flipped through pages of words he'd written when he was 15, 16, 17, before the divorce. Before he decided feelings were dangerous, they were terrible poems. Melodramatic and earnest and full of emotions he'd forgotten he was capable of feeling. They were beautiful. I stopped after you and Dad split up, he said. I know, I noticed. Caroline touched the notebook gently. You stopped writing. You stopped playing guitar. You stopped doing anything that wasn't productive or useful. It was like watching you turn yourself into a machine. It was easier that way. Easier isn't the same as better. Ethan read one of the poems, something about stars and loneliness and hoping someone out there was looking at the same sky. It was embarrassing. It was honest. It was him before he'd learned to hide. Can I keep these? He asked. They're yours. They've always been yours. Maya came back inside, took one look at their faces, and smiled. Everything okay? Yeah, Ethan said. I think it is. They stayed for lunch. Caroline's husband Tom came home, a quiet man who taught high school history and clearly adored Ethan's mother. He shook Ethan's hand and didn't make it weird, which Ethan appreciated. Over sandwiches and chips, Caroline asked about Ethan's life. Real questions, not the surface-level ones they usually stuck to in emails. Are you happy? She asked. Ethan thought about it. I'm working on it. That's honest, at least. Maya's teaching me how to be honest. Caroline looked at Maya with obvious curiosity. Just a friend. Mom, I'm just asking. It's complicated, Maya said, but she was smiling. The best things usually are. They left in the late afternoon. Caroline hugged Ethan at the door, a real hug, long and tight. Don't wait 2 years this time, she said. I won't. And Ethan, I'm proud of you, not for the company or the money or any of that. I'm proud that you're trying to find yourself again. Thanks, Mom. The car, Maya was quiet for the first hour of the drive back. Thank you, Ethan said finally. For what? For making me do that. I wouldn't have done it on my own. I know, that's why I made you. It was hard. The best things usually are, Maya said, echoing his mother's words. They drove through the sunset, the sky turning orange and pink and purple. Maya's playlist shuffled to a slow song, something in Spanish that Ethan didn't understand but felt anyway. Can I ask you something? He said. Always. Why do you care about me about this whole week? You could have just taken my money and ignored me. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Because I see you, Ethan. I see who you're trying to be underneath all the control and the schedules. And that person, the one who writes poetry and makes messes and shows up for his mom even when it's scary, that person is worth knowing. You barely know me. I know you better than you think. She glanced at him. I know you listen to my show at night when you can't sleep. I know you reread your favorite episodes. I know you cried during episode 247 when Daniel finally told Alina he loved her. Ethan's throat went tight. How do you know that? Because that's the episode that makes everyone cry, and because I can tell, she smiled. You're not as good at hiding as you think you are. They got back to Austin after dark. Maya pulled up to Ethan's building. Tomorrow's the last day, she said. What's the assignment? You'll see, but Ethan, whatever happens after this week, whatever you decide about the show, about the ending, I want you to know that you've already changed. You're already different than you were 6 days ago. Is that good? I think so, but you have to decide that for yourself. Ethan got out of the car, grabbed his overnight bag, turned back. Maya, yeah, I'm glad I spilled coffee on you, she laughed. You didn't spill coffee on me, I spilled it on you. Semantics. Important semantics. He watched her drive away, then went up to his empty penthouse. The box of notebooks was in his bag. He pulled them out, set them on his coffee table. Then he opened his laptop and did something he hadn't done in 15 years. He started writing. Not a business plan, not an email, not anything productive or useful. A poem. It was terrible, clumsy and awkward and full of feelings he didn't know how to express, but it was honest. And for now, that was enough. Day 6 never happened. Ethan woke up at 5:58 a.m. to his phone exploding with notifications. He'd left it on the nightstand, meaning to check it before meeting Maya, but the sheer volume of alerts made his stomach drop. 67 messages had become 243. He opened his phone. The first text was from Derek, "Call me now." The second was from Jennifer, "We have a situation." The third was from his PR team, "Do not talk to any reporters." Ethan's hands were shaking as he opened his email. The subject line of the first message made his blood run cold. Urgent, media crisis. He clicked it. Inside was a link to a tech news site. The headline was already loaded, already destroying everything. Tech CEO as secret obsession. Billionaire Ethan Cross revealed as superfan of romance podcast. Below it, screenshots. Email chains from his acquisition team. Messages discussing his personal interest in Hearts Unscripted. Internal memos about his request to meet with M. Santos. And worse, much worse, a screenshot of his podcast app library. 547 episodes downloaded. Listening history going back 3 years. Someone had leaked everything. Ethan read the article with a growing sense of horror. Sources inside Cross Technologies confirm that CEO Ethan Cross, known for his ruthless business tactics and public dismissal of unproductive content, has been secretly listening to romance podcast Hearts Unscripted for years. The revelation comes as particularly ironic given Cross's statement in a 2024 interview where he called fiction entertainment for people with nothing better to do. The article continued with quotes from anonymous employees, speculation about his mental state, and a gleeful recounting of every time he'd publicly dismissed emotional content as a waste of time. The comments section was brutal. The guy who said romance was for losers has been crying over fictional couples for 3 years. I'm deceased. Imagine being so repressed you have to hide that you like love stories. Get therapy, dude. This is the most human thing I've ever heard about Ethan Cross, and somehow it makes him seem even more robotic. Ethan's phone rang. Jennifer, he answered. I'm seeing it. It's everywhere, Twitter, Reddit, every tech blog. Someone even made a TikTok compilation of you looking serious in interviews with audio from the podcast playing over it. How did this happen? We're trying to figure that out. But Ethan, the board is panicking. Investors are calling. Everyone wants to know if it's true. It's true, silence on the other end. It's true, Ethan repeated. I listened to the show. I have been for 3 years. I bought the company because I didn't want it to end. Oh my God. I know. Ethan, you need to deny this. We can say your account was hacked, that an assistant used your phone. No, I'm not denying it. Are you insane? Your reputation is on the line. The company's reputation is on the line. My reputation is built on a lie, Ethan said quietly. Maybe it's time for the truth. The truth is going to cost you millions in investor confidence. Then it costs me millions. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. Who are you and what have you done with my CEO? I'm trying to figure that out. He hung up and scrolled through more notifications. The story had gone viral. Romantic Billionaire was trending on Twitter. Someone had created a Spotify playlist called Ethan Cross's Secret Shame. His phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Then another, reporters probably. He turned off his phone. Then he got dressed, got in his car, and drove to Maya's house. She answered the door in pajamas, holding her own phone, looking stricken. Ethan, you saw. Everyone saw. It's everywhere. She pulled him inside. Are you okay? I don't know. They sat on her couch. Bowie jumped up between them, sensing the tension. I'm so sorry, Maya said. This is my fault. If I hadn't pushed you to do this week, if I hadn't made you face all this stuff. This isn't your fault. Someone at my company leaked it. Someone who wanted to hurt me. It's working. Ethan laughed, but there was no humor in it. Yeah, it's working. Maya's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her expression changed. What? Ethan asked. My team, they're getting interview requests. People want to know what I think about my secret superfan billionaire. What are you going to tell them? I don't know. What do you want me to tell them? Ethan thought about it. Thought about his board, his investors, his carefully constructed image. Thought about the man he'd been 6 days ago versus the man sitting on this couch with paint still under his fingernails from day 3. Tell them the truth, he said. Which is that I've been lying for 3 years. That I pretended not to care about things that mattered to me because I was afraid of what people would think. That I bought your company because I couldn't stand the idea of losing something I loved, even if it was just a story. Maya was staring at him. You're really not going to deny it. I'm done denying things. Ethan, this could destroy your career. My career is built on pretending to be someone I'm not. Maybe it's time to find out who I actually am. She reached over and took his hand. That's very brave. That's very stupid. Sometimes they're the same thing. They sat in silence for a while, Bowie snoring softly between them. What do you want to do? Maya asked eventually. Ethan thought about it, about the week they'd spent together, about the assignments that had slowly cracked open something inside him he'd kept locked for years. I want to finish what we started, he said. What was day 6 supposed to be? Ethan, we don't have to. What was it? Maya hesitated. I was going to take you to the live recording of the final episode. It's tonight. At Zilker Park. 500 people are coming to hear how the story ends. Then let's go. You want to show up at a public event when you're currently being roasted across the entire internet. Yes. Why? Because I'm tired of hiding. Because you were right, I've been running from myself for so long I forgot what I was running from. And because, he started again. Because I want to know how it ends. Daniel and Alina. I want to know if they make it. Maya's eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. You really care about them. I care about what they represent. The idea that two people can be broken and messy and still choose each other. That love doesn't have to be perfect to be real. That's what I've been trying to tell you all week. I know, I'm a slow learner. She squeezed his hand. The recording starts at 7 p.m., but Ethan, if you come, everyone's going to know. Everyone's going to see you there. There's no taking it back. Good, he said. I don't want to take it back. His phone was still off. His company was probably in chaos. His board was probably having emergency meetings about damage control. But for the first time in his life, Ethan didn't care about any of that. He cared about something else, someone else. Maya, yeah, thank you for this week. For making me do things I didn't want to do. For seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. You're welcome, she smiled. Now go home and get ready. If you're going to publicly out yourself as a romance fan, you should at least look good doing it. Ethan stood up. Bowie grumbled at being disturbed. At the door, he turned back. The ending, have you written it yet? Not yet. But you know how it goes. Maya was quiet for a moment. I thought I did. Now I'm not so sure. What changed? You did. She closed the door softly, leaving Ethan standing on her porch with the afternoon sun warm on his face and the strangest feeling in his chest. It felt like hope. It felt like terror. It felt like the moment right before everything changes. He got in his car and drove home through a city that suddenly felt different. Or maybe he was different. Maybe that was the same thing. At his penthouse, he turned his phone back on. 462 notifications. He ignored all of them. Instead, he opened his podcast app and scrolled to episode 1 of Hearts Unscripted, the very first episode from 4 years ago, before he discovered it, before it had become his secret. He pressed play and listened to Maya's voice fill his empty apartment. "Welcome to Hearts Unscripted," she said. "Tonight's story is about a man who built walls so high he forgot there was a world outside them, and about the woman who didn't try to tear the walls down. She just waited on the other side until he was ready to walk through the door." Ethan closed his eyes and listened to the whole thing, and when it ended, he knew exactly what he had to do. Zilker Park at sunset was beautiful in that specifically Austin way. Live oaks draped with string lights, food trucks lining the perimeter, people sprawled on blankets with their dogs and their friends, and their carefully curated sense of casual cool. The stage for the Hearts Unscripted finale was set up near the lake. Simple but effective, a backdrop with the show's logo, 2 chairs, microphones, and speakers that would carry Maya's voice across the crowd. Ethan arrived at 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the recording was scheduled to start. He dressed carefully. Not a suit. He was done with suits for a while. Just jeans and a button-down shirt and the paint-stained apron from day 3 that he'd kept without really knowing why. The moment he stepped out of his car, people started recognizing him. "Oh my God, it's him, the podcast guy. Someone get a video." Phones came out, people whispered, a few laughed. One person actually applauded, though Ethan couldn't tell if it was sincere or mocking. He walked through the crowd with his head up, his heart hammering, his hands shaking slightly. This was it. No more hiding. No more pretending, just him and 500 strangers and the truth. Maya was backstage, a tent set up behind the main stage. She was talking to her team, gesturing with her hands in that animated way she had when she was nervous. She saw him and stopped mid-sentence. "You came," she said. "I told you I would." "I know, but," she gestured at the crowd. "They're all recording. This is going to be everywhere." "I know. Ethan, you can still leave. You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." Jade, Maya's best friend and co-producer, was staring at him with undisguised curiosity. "So you're the billionaire?" "I'm Ethan." Same thing, apparently, but she was smiling. "Maya's told us about you, about the week. All good things, I hope. Mostly confusing things, but that's kind of Maya's brand." Marcus, the sound engineer, handed Ethan a bottle of water. "You look like you're about to pass out." "I might." "Don't, we just cleaned this tent." Riley, the purple-haired intern, bounced over. "This is so romantic, like aggressively romantic. You're basically living out a story from the show." "That's not," Ethan started. "Oh, it totally is. Powerful man learns to feel feelings, shows up for the woman who taught him how. Classic." She looked at Maya. "You're going to put this in a future episode, right?" "Riley, I'm just saying this is premium content." A voice came over the walkie-talkie. 5 minutes to start." Maya took a deep breath. Okay, I need to get out there." "Wait," Ethan said. "Can I ask you something?" Now, she nodded. "The ending, Daniel and Alina, do they end up together?" Maya looked at him for a long moment. "Do you want them to?" "I want whatever's true." "That's not an answer." "Yes, it is. I spent this whole week learning that truth and happiness aren't opposites. That sometimes the most honest thing is also the most hopeful thing." He stepped closer. "So yes, I want them to end up together, not because it's easy, but because they choose each other, because they're brave enough to try." Maya's eyes were bright. "You really have changed. You changed me." "Minutes," the voice on the walkie-talkie said. Maya squeezed his hand. "Stay here, I'll call you up when it's time." When what's time? But she was already walking toward the stage, leaving Ethan alone with her team. "She's going to do something dramatic, isn't she?" he asked. "Oh yeah," Jade said. "Maya doesn't do anything halfway." The crowd quieted as Maya took the stage. 500 people all there to hear how a story ended. "Hi everyone," Maya said into the microphone, her voice warm and familiar. "Thank you for being here. Thank you for 4 years of listening, of feeling, of being part of this journey." Applause rippled through the crowd. "Tonight is our final episode, the end of Daniel and Alina's story, and I have to be honest with you, I didn't know how it was going to end until about 3 hours ago." Murmurs from the audience. I've spent the last week with someone who taught me something important. He taught me that endings don't have to be what we expect. They just have to be true." She paused. "And sometimes the truest thing is also the most hopeful thing." Ethan's heart was racing. "So before I read you the ending, I want to introduce you to someone. Someone who's been listening to this show for 3 years. Someone who cares about these characters as much as I do. Someone who," she smiled, "someone who's been very publicly outed as a romance fan in the last 24 hours. The crowd laughed. "Ethan Cross, would you come up here, please?" The laughter died. Shocked silence took its place. Ethan walked out from behind the stage. The moment he appeared, phones went up, cameras flashed, the whispers started. He climbed the steps to the stage, his legs shaking, his mouth dry. Maya handed him a microphone. "Hi," he said, and his voice cracked slightly. "I'm Ethan, and yes, I listen to romance podcasts." A few people laughed, a few applauded, most just stared. "I've been listening to Hearts Unscripted for 3 years," he continued. "In secret, because I was embarrassed. Because I thought caring about fictional characters was weak. Because I've spent my whole life believing that emotions are something to control, not something to feel." He looked at Maya. She nodded encouragement. "But this week, Maya taught me something. She taught me that stories aren't just entertainment. They're mirrors. They show us who we are and who we could be. And Daniel and Alina," his voice caught, "they showed me that it's possible to be broken and still be loved, to be messy and still be chosen, be afraid and still be brave." The crowd was completely silent now. I bought Maya's company because I couldn't stand the idea of this show ending, because I needed to know that Daniel and Alina would be okay, because if they could make it, maybe I could too. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "Maya asked me to prove I understood what I was asking for when I said I wanted to change the ending. So I wrote something. It's not good. I haven't written anything creative in 15 years. But it's honest." He unfolded the paper. His hands were shaking. "This is what I think happens next," he said. "This is the ending I hope for." He began to read. Daniel stood at the door, his hand raised to knock, his heart doing something complicated in his chest. He'd spent 3 years running, 3 years building walls, 3 years convincing himself that being alone was safer than being hurt. But Alina was on the other side of that door, and he was tired of running. He knocked. She answered, wearing paint-stained clothes and a smile that made his carefully constructed walls crumble. "You came," she said. "I almost didn't. But you did. But I did." They stood there looking at each other, years of almosts and maybes hanging between them. "I'm scared," Daniel said, because honesty was the only thing he had left to offer. "I know," Alina replied. "I'm scared too. What if I mess this up? You will mess it up, so will I. That's how this works. Then why try?" Alina stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, see the paint under her fingernails, feel the warmth of her presence. "Because messing up together is better than getting it right alone. Because I'd rather have messy and real than perfect and empty. Because you're worth the risk, Daniel. You've always been worth the risk." Daniel felt something break open in his chest, not breaking like shattering, breaking like blooming. "I love you," he said, the words he'd been holding back for 3 years. "I should have said it a long time ago, but I was afraid. I'm still afraid, but I love you anyway." Alina smiled. "I know, I've always known." "Then why did you wait?" "Because some things can't be forced, because you needed to choose this. Choose me, choose us." Daniel finally understood. Love wasn't about control. It wasn't about perfect timing or optimal conditions. It was about choosing someone every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. He stepped through the door. Alina was waiting on the other side, and for the first time in 3 years, Daniel stopped running. He chose to stay. Ethan finished reading, looked up at the crowd. Silence. Then from somewhere in the back, someone started clapping. Then someone else. Then the whole crowd was applauding, and some people were crying, and Ethan was standing on a stage in front of 500 strangers, feeling more exposed and more real than he'd ever felt in his life. Maya was staring at him with tears streaming down her face. "You wrote that?" she asked into her microphone. "I wrote that. For Daniel and Alina. For them and for me. And he looked at her, really looked at her. And for you, the crowd went wild. Maya laughed through her tears. You know everyone's recording this, right? This is going to be everywhere. I know. Your board is going to lose their minds. I know. You're probably going to lose investors. I know. He stepped closer. I'm tired of losing things that matter because I'm afraid of what people think. I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of pretending I don't feel things. What do you feel? The question hung in the air between them, amplified by microphones, witnessed by 500 people, and however many thousands would watch the videos later. Ethan took a breath. I feel terrified. I feel exposed. I feel like I'm standing on a stage making a complete fool of myself. He paused. And I feel like maybe that's okay. Maybe being a fool for something you care about is better than being smart and alone. Maya set down her microphone and walked to him. You're not a fool, she said quietly, though the microphone still picked it up. I'm something. You're brave. I'm something else too. What? I'm in love with you. The words came out before he could stop them, before he could calculate the risk or consider the consequences or do any of the things he'd spent his whole life doing. The crowd gasped. Maya stared at him. I know it's only been a week, Ethan continued, the words tumbling out now. I know this is fast and messy and probably a terrible idea, but you asked me to learn how to feel, and this is what I feel. I feel like I've been half asleep for years and you woke me up. I feel like every minute with you is more real than entire years of my life before. I feel like Maya kissed him. Right there on stage, in front of 500 people, with microphones broadcasting it and cameras recording it and the entire internet about to lose its collective mind. She kissed him and Ethan kissed her back, and for a moment the whole world was just the two of them and the truth between them. When they finally pulled apart, the crowd was screaming. Maya picked up her microphone, laughing. So, that's the ending. Daniel and Alina choose each other. They're messy and scared and imperfect. But they choose each other anyway. She looked at Ethan. And sometimes life imitates art. The recording ended with applause and cheers and probably 1,000 new videos being uploaded to social media. Backstage, Maya's team was grinning. That was insane, Jade said. That was perfect, Riley corrected. That was definitely going viral, Marcus added. Ethan's phone, which he'd finally turned back on, was exploding with notifications. But for once, he didn't care. He was too busy looking at Maya. So, she said, you love me, apparently. That's inconvenient. Why? Because now I have to admit I love you too. You do. I do. I have since day 3 when you got paint in your hair and laughed like an actual human being. She took his hand. You're a disaster, Ethan Cross. I know. You're going to drive me crazy. Probably. You're still going to try to optimize things that don't need optimizing. Definitely. And I'm still going to make you do things that terrify you. I'm counting on it. They stood there holding hands, surrounded by chaos and possibility. What happens now? Ethan asked. Now we figure it out together, messily. I don't have a plan for that. Good, Maya said. Neither do I, and for the first time in his life, Ethan was okay with not knowing what came next, because whatever it was, he wouldn't be facing it alone. The Webby Awards ceremony was exactly as pretentious as Ethan expected. Lots of people in expensive clothes pretending to care about digital innovation while mostly just networking. But Maya was nominated, so here he was, wearing a suit again, but this time with paint-stained sneakers that made the whole outfit somehow work. You're fidgeting, Maya whispered. I'm not fidgeting. You're absolutely fidgeting. I'm excited. You don't get excited. You get strategically enthusiastic. I'm learning. The category was Best Podcast, Arts and Culture. Hearts Unscripted was up against 4 other shows, all of them excellent, all of them less likely to make Ethan cry in public. The presenter opened the envelope. And the Webby goes to Hearts Unscripted, Maya screamed. Actual screamed. Then she grabbed Ethan's face and kissed him hard before running up to the stage. Ethan watched her accept the award. This woman who'd spilled coffee on him and called him a robot and somehow seen through every wall he'd built. She gave a speech about storytelling and vulnerability and the importance of feeling things even when it's scary. She thanked her team, her listeners, her mom, who she still missed every day, and then she looked directly at Ethan. "And thank you to my muse," she said, "who taught me that the best love stories are the ones we don't see coming." The crowd applauded. Ethan's face was definitely red. Later at the after party, Jennifer found him. "So," his CFO said, "the company didn't collapse, I noticed. In fact, our stock is up 12% since your very public emotional breakdown." It wasn't a breakdown. It was definitely a breakdown, but apparently investors like authenticity. Who knew? She clinked her champagne glass against his water. "You're happy," she observed. "I am." "It's weird, you smile now, like with your actual face." "I've always smiled." "No, you did that thing where you showed your teeth at appropriate moments. This is different, this is real." Ethan looked across the room to where Maya was talking to other podcasters, gesturing wildly, making everyone around her laugh. "Yeah," he said, "it's real." His phone buzzed, a text from Derek. "Dude, you're trending again. Romantic Billionaire is back. But this time it's people saying your relationship goals." Ethan smiled and put his phone away. 6 months ago, he would have been horrified. 6 months ago, he would have immediately started damage control. Now he just didn't care what strangers on the internet thought. He cared about the woman across the room who taught him how to feel. He cared about the dog waiting at home who'd learned to tolerate his presence. He cared about the poetry he'd started writing again, terrible and honest and his. Maya caught his eye and smiled, mouthed. "You okay?" He nodded, mouthed back, "Perfect." And for the first time in his life, he actually meant it. Later that night, back at Maya's house, which was technically their house now, though Ethan still kept his penthouse for when he needed to work, they sat on the porch swing with Bowie between them. "So," Maya said, "I have news. Good news or bad news? Good news, I got a book deal." Ethan sat up. "What?" "A publisher wants to turn Hearts Unscripted into a novel series. 3 books. Actual paper books that people can hold." "Maya, that's incredible." "I know, right? My mom would have loved it." She was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to dedicate the first one to her. She'd be proud of you." "I hope so." Maya leaned against him. "The publisher wants to know if I have any other story ideas." "Do you?" "Maybe. There's this one about a tech CEO who learns to be human, very niche market." Ethan laughed. "Sounds terrible." "It kind of is, but it's also kind of beautiful." They sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies appear in the garden as the sky darkened. "Ethan?" "Yeah." "Are you happy?" He thought about the question, really thought about it. 6 months ago, he would have said he was successful, accomplished, financially secure. Now, "Yeah," he said, "I'm happy." "Good," Maya kissed his cheek, "because you're stuck with me now. I can live with that. And with Bowie. Him too. And with my chaotic schedule and my tendency to start projects at midnight and my complete inability to keep plants alive. All of it. Even when I make you do weird emotional exercises. Especially then." Maya smiled and settled back against him. Somewhere in the house, Ethan's productivity app sent him a notification. He'd kept it, but now it had different categories. Time with Maya, time doing nothing, time being human. He ignored the notification. Some moments didn't need to be optimized. Some moments just needed to be lived. And this, sitting on a porch swing with the woman he loved and a dog who'd finally accepted him and fireflies dancing in the garden, this was a moment worth living. No algorithm required.